crimes are unimaginable, and it didn't matter who. She wanted Chad Daybell. Her own son even testified against her, saying that his mom spent her whole life protecting him and his siblings, but after she met Chad Daybell, she changed. This undercover doomsday mom is a rare but true crime story that continues to play out. And that's exactly what happened with the downfall of Lori Vallow Daybell into a cult-like obsession who didn't even report her kids missing. But first, we need to go back to October 19th, 2019, when Chad Daybell reported his current wife at the time, Tammy Daybell, had died, saying she had gone to bed with a cough and didn't wake up. And the cause of death was initially ruled as a natural causes, and no autopsy was done. But Tammy's death was later ruled as suspicious, and in December of 2019, Tammy's body was exhumed for an autopsy, but the results were not made public until 2021 when Chad and Lori were charged in their connection with her death. But what's even more strange and mysterious is what Lori did to her husband and children before she married Chad Daybell. 2 weeks after Chad's wife suspiciously died, Lori and Charles Vallow, one of her former husbands, got married in 2006, but their marriage started to fall apart in 2019 when Charles filed for divorce because he was concerned for his and his children's safety. Her own family and friends even said she was becoming more and more obsessed with death and the afterlife. And by this point, in July 2019, Charles Vallow was shot in the chest and killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox, when Charles had gone to Lori's new home in Arizona to pick up their son, JJ. But Alex claims he shot Charles in self-defense after the pair got into a fight. Alex had a large cut on the back of his head, and his niece Tylee somewhat backed up his version of the story, saying she had seen the start of the altercation before being rushed out of the house and to school by her mother, Lori, but she wasn't actually there at the time of the shooting. Lori even told Charles' older sons that their dad had died with a text message, offering no further explanation, and days later, Lori would attempt to file a claim for Charles' $1 million life insurance policy, only to discover that she was no longer the beneficiary. Then, that September, she moved to Idaho to be closer to Chad Daybell after getting married in Hawaii. Chad Daybell launched his own publishing company in order to self-publish books about prophecies he believed to be delivered to him from angels, which also contained details of an apocalypse. Together, Lori and Chad believed they were chosen to lead people into the second coming of Christ, which they believed there would be 144,000 pure souls in which to find and lead, with millions of others being zombies, trying to distract them from their completing their mission. But what they didn't know is that the 144,000 it says will go to heaven in the Bible are the people that are actually already in heaven. The rest of us actually are asleep until the return of Jesus Christ. That's what the Bible and Scripture teaches us. But Chad's first wife, Tammy, died, not only with mysterious circumstances, but 2 weeks afterwards, he married Lori, with her obituary saying she died peacefully in her sleep. Sins of Our Mother, the documentary, lays out how Lori became obsessed with the same stuff Chad Daybell believed, but as extensive as the series is, there are some elements of the case that have been left out, in large part due to the developments that have taken place since the documentary was made. We initially see the show play out from what we know of the timeline of Lori's life, starting with her previous marriages and up to her marriage to Charles Vallow, and throughout this period of time, we see Lori become more reliant on the church, and after that, she started growing attached to Chad Daybell. But Lori had 3 children, her son Colby Ryan, daughter Tylee Ryan, and Joshua Jackson Vallow, or JJ, who she adopted while she was still married to her 4th husband, Charles Vallow. And as Lori became more devoted, she became more distant with her oldest son Colby. But it gets much worse. In 2019, Lori and Chad made headlines when 16-year-old Tylee and 7-year-old JJ went missing. The children were last seen that September, with family contacting the police for a welfare check in November, and they weren't even officially declared missing until that December. Tylee was last photographed at Yellowstone National Park on September 8th, and JJ last attended school on September 23rd, and court documents state Lori removed JJ from school the following day, claiming she would be homeschooling him from then on. But at this point, Lori and Chad refused to cooperate with the Idaho police, and instead they would claim the kids were fine, but would not present the children or disclose their whereabouts. and by this point they were immediately considered persons of interest, and alarms went off when they got married in Hawaii in the middle of the disappearance of the children, just weeks after Tammy's death. Lori's wedding ring was even bought on Amazon with the late Charles Vallow's account. When Hawaii police demanded Lori present the children within a 5-day period and she failed to do so, she was arrested and charged and then extradited back to Idaho. The children were missing for almost 9 months, and in June 2020, both Tylee and JJ were confirmed to be found and buried on the property and backyard of Chad Daybell. Madison County Prosecuting Attorney Rob Wood even noted the concealment of one of the children's bodies was particularly egregious, and the FBI cellular analysis team were called in by the Idaho police to help with the investigation, during which time messages from Chad Daybell to his late wife Tammy on September 9th, 2019 revealed he had decided to burn yard debris before it got too soaked with rainwater, and the message Chad claimed he also shot and killed a raccoon and had buried the animal in the pet cemetery. But they both denied breaking any laws, and police detective Ray Hermosillo revealed chilling details about the day he found the remains of JJ and Tylee on Chad's property. As they were digging, Ray eventually uncovered bits and pieces of Tylee, or who he assumed was Tylee. She had been burned, and there were even pieces of bone and charred flesh, so they continued to dig, finding a partial skull, and the remains of JJ were found wrapped in black bags underneath a tree in the backyard, with the cause of death that he was asphyxiated with a plastic bag and duct tape over his mouth. Then, Chad tells the cops he hardly knew Lori, even though they were married at the time. When Detective Ray visited Chad's house in 2019, after JJ had been reported missing, he asked Chad for Lori's number, but Chad said he didn't have it, even though the detective knew he was lying because authorities knew that they had got married 2 weeks prior. The jurors even got to hear a recording of a phone conversation between Chad and Lori that took place while authorities searched Chad's property for JJ and Tylee. During the call, Lori asked Chad if he was okay answering they are searching the property and that there was a search warrant, but later in the call, Lori asked, "Are they seizing stuff again?" And Chad responded, "They are searching, we'll see what happens." But just as shocking as the brutal slayings were the fanatical beliefs that the prosecutor said Lori and Chad used to justify a deadly conspiracy were just as dark and evil. When they met at the conference in 2018 and, although both were married to other people, quickly came to share cultish beliefs, so the prosecution argued they had been married in a past life and had prophetic doomsday visions. They also even claimed to have special powers, from teleportation to the potential for magically calling up natural disasters or causing harm to others. Sounds a lot like voodoo to me. They even categorized people as good or evil, or light and dark, and regarded dark individuals as zombies, whose possessed bodies would have to die so the person's spirit could be freed. And among those Lori and Chad described as zombies were not only JJ and Tylee, their own children, but also their spouses. Lori even told law enforcement that Tylee had enrolled at BYU and that JJ was in Arizona with her former best friend Melanie Gibb. But the court was played a secret phone call between Lori and Melanie, in which Melanie can be heard confronting Lori over being asked to lie to the police about JJ's whereabouts, and Melanie later contacted law enforcement to confirm that JJ was not with her, and Lori claiming that Tylee was enrolled at the university was also proven to be false. Lori was declared mentally unfit for trial in 2021 and was committed to a mental health facility until she was mentally fit to stand trial, and in April 2022, her lawyers entered a not guilty plea on her behalf because the state of Idaho does not allow an insanity defense at trial. Even though a defendant can aim to demonstrate that they were incapable of forming the criminal intent required to commit the crime, but her defense did not even call a single witness. During the evidence phase of the trial, and after consulting with his client, he didn't believe the state had proven its case, so the defense rested, and just before this was Lori, who had a creepy Kamala Harris smile on her face. In closing arguments, Madison County Prosecutor Rob Wood laid out the state's case that Lori helped orchestrate a plot with Chad Daybell to kill her children and Chad's wife, hoping to remove any obstacle to a life with him. Money, sex, and power, or the promise of all of these things, factored into Lori's motivations, and repeatedly emphasized that she had never even reported her children missing. as she continued to collect their Social Security benefits, but defense attorney Jim Archibald argued that Lori was completely under the control of Chad's fanatic teachings and did not help plan the killings, and had only lied to authorities to protect him, because they were supposedly eternal companions. So Archibald pinned the murders solely on Chad Daybell, saying the state had failed to prove Lori's participation in the conspiracy, but I believe they planned the entire thing. Chad Daybell was sentenced to death in the triple murder case, nearly a year after his wife, Lori Vallow Daybell, was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Chad was convicted of first-degree murder of his first wife, Tammy Daybell, and two of Lori's children, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, and also for the conspiracy in the murders and insurance fraud. Lori was convicted of murder in their 3 deaths and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching.